In the 2008 presidential race, Republican Vice President nominee Sarah Palin has been the target of the Saturday Night Live comedian Tina Fey. Is Fey's dead-on impersonation of the Alaskan governor helping or hurting the John McCain-Sarah Palin ticket? The resemblance between Tina Fey and the Alaskan governor is so close it seems as though the two were separated at birth. There are some key differences though. The Republican campaign is trying to project Palin as a smart, folksy, Washington outsider reformer. Tina Fey shows a pageant queen, hockey mom, pseudo-maverick way over her head. But the similarities between the two is unnerving. Fey has embodied the Alaskan governor to a T, from Palin's Midwestern accent to her carefully crafted hairstyle. But the real likeness is the extent to which Fey uses Palin's words. For example, spoofing Katie Couric's interview with Palin, Fey began an answer on the credit bailout with Palin's actual meandering phrases, vaguely connecting the crisis, healthcare, and canned sound bites on job creation, before venturing into the frozen tundra of nonsensical responses. But what was fact and what was invention? Unless you went back to the original video, it was hard to tell. The ultimate example of this is now the famous phrase, "I can see Russia from my house." Who really said it?
And I can see Russia from my house.
I don't know.
That was Tina Fey.
Palin.
Tina Fey?
Sarah Palin.
Tina Fey?
Sarah Palin.
Tina Fey.
Sarah Palin said in the Charlie Gibson interview,
"You can actually see Russia from land here in Alaska."
Tina Fey kind of took that as, "I can see Russia from my house."
The famous line has led to question about Palin's foreign policy credentials. Does a proximity to Russia really count as international political experience? In an interview with Katie Couric, Palin argues it does.
We have trade missions back and forth. We do. It's very important when you consider even national security issues with Russia, as Putin rears his head and comes into the airspace of the United States of America. Where do they go? It's Alaska.
To use military jargon, Palin's comment left her defense down and open for attack, and Tina Fey took the bait. Fey and fellow SNL star Amy Poehler took on the roles of Sarah Palin and Katie Couric for another skit about the hockey mom governor.
On foreign policy, I want to give you one more chance to explain your claim that you have foreign policy experience based on Alaska's proximity to Russia. What did you mean by that?
Well, Alaska and Russia are only separated by a narrow maritime border. You've got Alaska here, and this right here is water, and then that's up there's Russia. So we keep an eye on them.
Imitating politicians is nothing new. Hofstra University Associate Professor of Political Science, Richard Himmelfarb, says that before Tina Fey and Sarah Palin, another Saturday Night Live alum influenced the masses by emulating a former U.S. president.
We know that when Chevy Chase did his famous impression of Gerald Ford in the 1970s, it influenced people's perception of Gerald Ford as a klutz. And that was even though Gerald Ford was an athlete. The perception that people had of him after seeing the Chevy Chase impression, where he would always be stumbling around or hitting his head on the ceiling or something of that nature, many people saw him as being kind of befuddled and clumsy.
While Chevy Chase did not physically resemble Gerald Ford, Chase's portrayal of the president did swing some voters towards Democratic nominee Jimmy Carter in the 1976 presidential election. So could Tina Fey's portrayal of Sarah Palin cost the Republican Party in the 2008 election? Professor Himmelfarb says that's not likely.
I don't think it's had really any impact. I think that the people who take the greatest delight in the impression are the people who really dislike Sarah Palin and had no intention of voting for her in the first place. I think that ultimately the impression on Saturday Night Live is no worse, there's no more damage to her than all of the other negative coverage from the liberal media.
While this may ring true for identified party voters, what about the independents? Compared to third-party affiliated voters, independent voters may be paying more attention to Tina Fey's weekly lampooning of Sarah Palin rather than the speeches or the policy positions of the presidential campaigns. And in the key battleground states such as Ohio, Florida, and Indiana, the independent vote is the most important for the candidates. Independents can be the most volatile vote because they lack party attachments and will listen to the loudest noise rather than the message. As we near the end of the race for the White House, the candidates' criticisms will only get harsher and the attacks more intense. Luckily, the public will still have political commentary to rely upon. On behalf of our editor Eric Palke, our writer Patty Kreiser, and reporter Kyle Giesman, I'm Kevin Carmignani.